Good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this institutional event of the 12th Spanish Passivhaus Conference. The circumstances prevent us from having an in-person meeting that without doubt would have been much more intense and fruitful, but the platform has made an undeniable effort not to interrupt the sequence of these conferences and ensure that we do not ignore any of the interesting aspects of Passivhaus-related work being carried out in the territory. For that reason, I would like to express my immense gratitude. Public administrations have the obligation to support planned policies with all available resources, but these resources must be applicable and usable. When transferring this paradigm to housing policy in the autonomous community of Aragon, we discover that the public housing park is scarce, barely reaching 500 units to meet existing demand. Therefore, when studying the different forms of intervention to promote the public housing park, key considerations must necessarily be its rehabilitation, refurbishment and the search for new models of access to housing. In autonomous communities like Aragon, where own property of this type is already scarce, with high demand for both affordable rented and social housing, we must work on policies that go beyond the construction of new homes. Firstly, because this property can be used, but needs work to avoid it being lost. And secondly, because we must act with financial responsibility. Ignoring existing heritage is not a responsible action. Specifically, in the case of homes that form part of this existing heritage or housing park, their state or condition makes comprehensive rehabilitation necessary so that they can be included in the public housing park, principally for rental. When considering the scope of actions, it is essential to optimize resources and value the needs of potential future users. For example, it is very important to take into account conditions of energy poverty. Experience has taught us that it is pointless having a good heating system in a home if the people who are going to occupy that home are unable to pay for that heating. The same applies to known health problems caused by poorly insulated housing that does not have heating or when people cannot afford to pay for the heating. In a continental climate with severe winters like the ones we have here, this is even more important. So minimum housing rehabilitation will not resolve these problems, nor will installing a conventional heating system with a higher budget. For all of these reasons, a series of converging factors have allowed us to take the perfect decision. When faced with the need, willingness, when faced with the provision of material and human resources, opportunity, in addition to the budget, the most suitable system, the ENEFIT system, a decision that has enabled us to achieve important and quite ambitious objectives, meet social demand to guarantee the right to decent and adequate housing, resolve the problem of thermal comfort and personal hygiene in dwellings occupied by people with limited resources or in energy poverty situations, optimize homes owned by the administration and make them available to those who need them. In other words, efficient use of public resources. Implement regulations governing the construction of almost zero energy consumption buildings, and act as an exemplary administration, training technical staff of the administration, promotion, advertising, information to experts and citizens, and anticipate, this is fundamental, working before the end of deadlines for the application of regulations. And how has all of this been achieved? Well, this is the way in which we've undertaken the comprehensive rehabilitation of the homes or houses owned by the government of Aragon. Four main means were used. Firstly, access to budget. We had access to the investment fund of the province of Teruel, known as FITE, F-I-T-E, a 4-year agreement between the General State Administration, the Ministry of Finance, public administrations and the Aragon government for the development of actions that favour income and wealth, addressing existing interterritorial inequalities in Aragon. On the other hand, availability of 2 empty apartment buildings belonging to the General Directorate of Housing and rehabilitation of the government of Aragon located in the parks of Maquinarias and Alcañiz in Teruel, consisting of 6 and 10 homes respectively. Thirdly, access to the Building Quality Control Laboratory belonging to the Architecture and Rehabilitation Service of the Directorate General as a key element in the research, control and training. Finally, political will. the willingness to take on the challenge and commit to the future, a decision that was not easy in a new political context, to carry out an innovative project and overcome administrative inertia. Based on these foundations, detailed so far, comprehensive refurbishment projects were undertaken, buildings and old homes located in the different areas mentioned, built in the 1970s with 5 stories, 2 homes per floor without elevator or heating and with very similar construction features. Concrete structure, in one case with load-bearing walls, covered by gabled roofs and partitions and facing brick facades. Comprehensive rehabilitation was carried out incorporating elevators and 2 homes adapted to people with disabilities on the ground floor and the very important goal of eventually obtaining ENEFIT certification. The project, for administrative reasons, was divided into 2 phases, one carried out between 2017 and 2018, consisting in the common elements, envelope and adaptation of the homes on the ground floor, and the second phase between 2018 and 2019, consisting in the execution of the rest of the facilities and homes. The total project budget amounted to just over €1,700,000, distributed as follows: 940,000 in Teruel and 760,000 in Alcaniz, with the price per metre squared being 946 in Teruel and €804 in Alcaniz, so we consider the price to be high. As indicated before, however, it must be borne in mind that this was a comprehensive reform project refurbishing practically everything except the structure and framework and part of the facades. In addition to rehabilitation with almost 0 energy consumption, the management and execution of the work entailed greater complexity across the board. Certain aspects conditioned the management of the project. For example, the decision to opt for the Passivhaus system and not just any other energy efficiency system. This was key given the high consideration of the standard itself, in compliance with directives given the lack of definition of regulatory values in Spain, its application in the rest of the countries of the European Union, safety, reliability, offering certification as a guarantee of results, and efficiency in public investment. Another aspect was inclusion of this decision in the preparation and drafting of procurement documents in compliance with public sector contract regulations, especially in terms of the requirements that designers of the project and operational management had to comply with to ensure that the projects could be prepared in a tight deadline and also had ENEFIT certification without modifications. Another aspect identified was that since this is an incipient qualification which is not very common and extended among professionals in the sector at that time, well, this gave rise to problems in the tender process and even the reaction of some groups who expressed reluctance or directly opposed these requirements or standards. Finally, it's necessary to train our technical staff, the technical staff of the administration, to ensure they are sufficiently qualified to supervise projects of these characteristics and coordinate and supervise projects, as well as train them how to acquire new material for the laboratory in order to carry out quality controls. As mentioned previously, this is something novel for the administration, since the administration is not known for being precisely very innovative in terms of training. Finally, after a rather different process, administratively and technically speaking, we can say that the comprehensive rehabilitation of the homes was successfully completed, with both buildings obtaining ENEFIT certification. In the end, although the buildings could not be delivered in person and officially, since it coincided with the pandemic and it was not possible to coordinate the necessary health safety conditions, we were unable to officially deliver them. Currently, both buildings have been publicly offered for occupancy on a rental basis and at an affordable price, and for different types of living units, from families with children to single people, couples, including, as mentioned previously, a specific percentage of homes for people with reduced mobility. Based on initial data of the offer collected so far, I'm in a position to affirm that we will achieve full occupancy of the building, and if this doesn't happen for different reasons, we're also assessing the possibility that these homes, if any become vacant, could be occupied by applicants for rented council or social housing, thus guaranteeing that the homes made available to people are made available to those who really need them, and that allocating, let's say, minimum possible resources for energy consumption, the residents will be able to enjoy good levels of comfort and health. And this is a question that, after having experienced lockdown during the state of alarm, acquires more value and importance than ever. It's very relevant in that sense. So, with this little impetus or push to the refurbishment in accordance with ENEFIT terms, we intend to act and behave as an exemplary administration as required by European regulations, promoting knowledge, training and dissemination of sustainability goals and quality of life. And as such, we continue to work on developing phase-based ENEFIT rehabilitation or reform projects, for example, in our homes in Escucha in Teruel and in another building in Alcañiz in Teruel, and also developing another project of 10 homes in a building in Teruel. All the data obtained from cost-benefit analyses for this refurbishment or reform model under the almost zero energy consumption standard compared to non-refurbished buildings with the same characteristics, with minimum reform or minimal and reformed buildings under the current technical code, well, this will allow us to make decisions on future projects to improve results with notable efficiency. And finally, to conclude, I would like to highlight the challenges identified after this reform project by the government of Aragon, and specifically the Directorate General of Housing and Rehabilitation, or Reform. Firstly, the importance of training and educating future residents of these buildings in the adequate use of the facilities and the benefits that can be obtained by doing so, extending this final idea to the entire population. And finally, training, dissemination, research, sustainability and social benefits as a key role of the administration before society through these type of projects. Thank you for your attention, and we can now continue with these very interesting presentations.